Hi again then guys, and we're finally here. The big one, at least for me personally, the number one car from Gran Turismo 2, which I would put above all others, not only as my favourite car in the game, easily, but also the number one car from any Gran Turismo game that I would like to see brought back. The Renault Espace F1. The most crazy Renault ever made, easily, not even close, in fact nothing else comes close to this from the Renault dealership. And in terms of an overall package, pretty much nothing else comes close to that either, because this is a Formula 1 engined, race spec, but not racing, people mover, or MPV. That's pretty unique, to say the least, and this is an incredible performance car. It was in the Guinness Book of Records back in the day for being one of the top 10 fastest accelerating cars in the world. 0 to 60 was something like 2.6, 2.7 seconds. It's powered by a 3.5 litre naturally aspirated Williams engine. It's mid-mounted, but it still has 4 seats, which I personally think is pretty cool. The engine sits right in between the 2 rear passengers, so you might want to wear some headgear to drown out the sound. The engine redlines at around 14,000 RPM. You're looking at a peak power of over 800 horsepower, over 300 pound-feet of torque, and even though it's a pretty big vehicle, it only weighs 1,300 kilos. That means that horsepower per tonne is 629, so across the board this is at least as good as many GT class race cars, but in some ways even better, such as sheer power. The price tag is 2 million credits, which is quite a bit, but that is a similar price to many of the other LM style race cars on Gran Turismo 2, stuff like your Vector M12, your Venturi 600LM, that kind of stuff. So the question is, of course, why is this in random reviews? Well, it's actually not the place that I would have liked to have had this car. I would have liked to have put the Espace F1 in GT Masters up against the kind of cars which it would be running against. Prototypes, GT1s, and, in particular, GT class race cars. But the simple fact is, this isn't a GT class race car. In fact, technically, it's not a race car at all. It's a track day special, which is just a really fast concept. A really impressive working prototype, a showcase of what Renault can do, and at the end of the day, an advert to sell more Renault Espace models on the road. So it's not really a GT class race car in any sense. It's actually closer to a Formula car, if you really want to get technical about it, but at the same time, it seemed appropriate to put it in random reviews alongside stuff like the Formula 1 cars of the Gran Turismo franchise, those vehicles which do have their own class, but that class isn't very well represented on Gran Turismo, so we feature it there. Now, in terms of what this car can do, there is really nothing else like it in the entire Gran Turismo franchise. Imagine something on the newer Gran Turismo games, for instance, like a Renault Aventime, or a Honda Odyssey, or even something like a Mitsubishi Airtrek, because that's about the closest thing to this overall, those vehicles. Imagine those cars, but then if you put a cheat disc in and doubled the acceleration, or tripled it. That's the kind of experience that you have driving the Espace F1. This is crazy fast. It's one of the fastest cars in the game for sheer acceleration. The top end speed, not as much. It can do around, I believe it's 194 miles per hour in real life, and you're looking at a similar kind of speed in the game as well, so it certainly isn't slow, and in fact around most tracks it can pretty much take on any other car in the game, up to and including the likes of the Nissan R390 and Toyota GT1. It can even bring the heat to those cars. It won't always beat them, but you'd be surprised how close it can come, and sometimes it can beat them if you're driving against the computer. Now, in terms of how the car performs, as I mentioned just now, it is totally different to anything else, but to get more specific, the handling is surprisingly precise for a vehicle that is so big and looks so cumbersome. Because as we said earlier, it does weigh 1,300 kilos, which is a lot less than the standard car does, that's for sure. However, it carries at least some of its weight much higher than pretty much any race car with these kind of numbers would usually have, especially if you're comparing it to something like a Formula car. Of course, they are ultra low, ultra wide. Now this car is ultra wide, so at least they did that to help it along, but the height could be a problem. But it's a real testament to both Renault and Williams that they made this car work so well. You can look up footage of this car driving on YouTube, and it flies through the corners. There's no body roll at all, really, and it has basically the level of track performance which you would typically expect from something like a Ferrari FXX, a Maserati MC12 Corsa, an Aston Martin Vulcan, or a Pagani Zonda R. And I would personally love to see the Espace F1 do a flying lap of the Nordschleife, although I think there's probably a 99.9% chance that that will never happen. Very unlikely, to say the least. However, if it did, I would love to see what that lap could be. I would say it's almost definitely under 7 minutes, but at the same time, you got to remember that stuff like the Zonda R is still running, what is it, between like 620 and 640, that kind of region, so it wouldn't necessarily be that quick, I don't think, especially not on a technical circuit like the Nürburgring Ring, but it ain't going to be slow. It's got over 800 horsepower at the end of the day, which is a lot more than an FXX or a Zonda R, so it's certainly got the numbers to achieve greatness, and in the world of GT2, that it certainly does. This has always been my favourite car in the game, and if you do want to try out this vehicle, you definitely won't be disappointed. It's absolutely insane, one of the craziest cars of the entire franchise. Easily, it's up there with the Escudo, the Speed 12, and a couple of others. It's awesome, and I could talk about this car all day. In fact, I talk about it quite a lot on the channel, so it's nice to finally review it. But that's it overall for this particular pick. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.